Simon Goodwin's time at Melbourne came to a close 8 days ago. Simon, thanks for being here on 360. Welcome.
Evening, Gerard. Evening, Gaz. Good to be on.
What gamut of emotion have you gone through over the past week or so?
It was a real rollercoaster, clearly. Obviously, you go through the disappointment and the emotional, letdown, sharing the emotions with your family and friends, and then you go into, what's next. You go from a day where you're thinking about 100 different decisions and 100 different things you've got to do to waking up and nothing and, walking the dog 3 times a day. So life changes pretty quickly and you move forward pretty quickly. And, I've been blown away with the messages of support and love and thanks. And, I'm looking forward to the next opportunity.
Those in your profession say that this is part of it and your day will come. How confronting was it when your night came?
Yeah, look, it's clearly confronting. You go into this role and into this career knowing that at some stage it's not going to end on your terms. And as I said, I'm so fortunate 10 years in to coach a great footy club at Melbourne and the oldest footy club in the land, to have 10 years and your day's coming. But, like everything, it's confronting when it happens. It's emotional. You put so much into it. You invest so much into it. Your family does. And at the time, it's incredibly confronting.
I suspect most coaches get an inkling somewhere along the way. This one appeared to come out, well, for me anyway, on the outside. But what about you when you got a call from Brad Green on that night? Was it, something's afoot, but yeah. Give us a level of your understanding of what happened that day and how much of a shock it was to you.
Yeah, look, it was a shock. There's no doubt about that. I was disappointed that they'd come to that decision. But, you accept that decision. But clearly, you've invested so much and, you're always vulnerable as a senior coach. And obviously with outcome, we'd only won 7 games for the season. if you look in behind some of just the outcome of the 7 wins, there's things in our game that are heading in the right direction. And that's why I'm quite bullish about where the group's at and the opportunity that's presented in front of them, especially for the next coach. So it's confronting and it is a little bit vulnerable.
We'll get through a whole heap of stuff, but is that... It's sort of an indication, though, shouldn't you be a little aware, like if your communication with the people who make this decision is where it should be, that it shouldn't be such a big shock, or is that a naive approach from someone that doesn't know anything about it?
Oh, look, I think, as I said, the board have got their process and it would be really wrong for me to sit here and speak on behalf of the board and the process that they undertook. Would I love to have sat there and gone through what I thought was going to be the process moving forward and the strategy needed, really go after the job that I really wanted? Yeah, I would have loved to. Do I 100% think that I was the right person to carry this team forward? Yeah, I do, because I've done it before and build this next premiership team that I feel is well on its way to doing. But, that's the decision the board made, and I accept that decision. They need a new voice and they want a new voice and they're going to get one.
So you would have liked the chance to fight for your job?
Yeah, absolutely I would have. I had a standard board meeting the week before and didn't have an inkling at that point. But as I said, I'm sure the board went through a thorough process. I can't speak on behalf of the board. All I can speak on is what I would have loved to have done, and I would have loved to have got that opportunity.
It's a tough decision to make for Brad Green, who's a football person, but can you give us an insight into his and their decision, the reasoning? Like, he sat next to you and said, "Oh, we need a fresh voice." And I understand, probably out of respect, he can't be as forthcoming, but there must have been more than that.
No, that was the reason I got, was that they needed a fresh voice and they needed a new voice and a new, someone new to take them forward. And as I said, I accept that decision. I don't need to seek anymore. I'm sure they went through a bit of a deeper process of what that looked like. But
is that enough for you, a fresh voice? I mean, there must be greater nuance to it than that.
Yeah, look, obviously, as I said, that's, you're disappointed. I can't speak on behalf of the board. And I know people press me about, what is... what was the board thing? I can't speak on behalf of them. I love my time coaching the Melbourne Footy Club. I love the players. I love the position that we're starting to build towards again. Am I disappointed that I'm not going to be a part of that? Absolutely I am. Did
you think being a premiership coach would have afforded you a little more loyalty with a contract still to run for next year?
Look, I think what being a premiership coach does is it gives great indication that you're capable of doing the job and capable of building them back to where you think they are. And as I said, we live in an outcome-based sport, so I understand that the 7 wins of the season isn't where we want it to be right now. But if you look deeper in behind, some of the things that we're transitioning towards success, there's a lot of good things that are in behind that, and that's the disappointing part.
So did you coach for the future? Did you coach on the journey figuring you had 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. No matter how long I've got on a contract, I'll always be coaching to build a premiership team. because that's what it's about. It's not about just coaching for the now and getting to a final or winning 11 or 12 games. It's about building, and we've got some wonderful young kids that were coming through that I wanted to play, that I knew that were really important to building this next premiership team, and I wouldn't change anything of that. I'd always coach that way. It's about the team, it's about the footy club, it's not about me.
You coached without the next president. There was a president in place. You coached without the next chief executive who had been appointed and wasn't there. Did it lead to a lack of alignment?
I think clearly. Clearly you need alignment for success. And I think if you look around the great sporting organisations around the world, in business, in sport, alignment's critical, and it's critical because it builds trust, and you can make some really great decisions that you need to moving forward. And I can only speak about my early days at Melbourne. Peter Jackson was wonderful in setting that environment up to build that stability, to have 6 years of making wonderful decisions for the footy club, which enabled to build the foundations for the success that was needed. So I think any coach, if you read any book of any successful coach, the biggest thing they talk about is stability and alignment.
Is it a fractured football club in as much as the things that Gerard pointed to, the interim CEO, the president that's there but about to hand over, physically, you're at the MCG, you're at Amy Park, you're at Casey. Does that add up to a fractured football club?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think there's certainly been challenges that sit within that, and there's things that all football clubs need to work on, and Melbourne's no different. But if you walk through the doors at training at Casey Fields with those players, the environment's healthy, the environment's alive and well, they're committed as ever to getting better, and that's the biggest part of your program to get right, and they're in a really good space. So
what in your mind when Melbourne supporters say, we won that flag in 2021, they're beautifully placed, the list was where it's at. What in your mind has led to not having greater success than you would like, and got to the point now where you no longer coach?
Yeah, as I said, one of the things I'm most proud of, which I spoke about in my press conference last week, was our ability to back up 22 and 23 and put ourselves in top 4 positions to give ourselves a chance to win another premiership. That's difficult in the modern game, and you look in recent times, there's not too many teams that have not only made finals, let alone finished in the top 4 to give themselves opportunities. So we weren't able to maximise those opportunities as well as we could to win that next premiership, but it is something I'm really proud of. I listened to a podcast yesterday, and it was Pete Carroll of the Las Vegas Raiders, and he was talking about, you got asked the question, is it tougher to build a premiership program or maintain a premiership program? And they're two very different things, and there's no doubt that they've both got different challenges, but maintaining it's really different because you really dig into the purpose, the intrinsic motivations are really tested to their core. Because you've climbed the mountain, and can you do it over and over and over again? And that tests everyone. Did
that become an issue for the group? Because there were some disciplinary issues which have been well documented. Did they handle the success well, and were you hard enough on them?
Oh, clearly, you get tested in your purpose, and we would have done things a little bit differently through that period to really make sure we had some unforeseen challenges. I was tough on the group. I drove a pretty hard program through, especially post the 21 grand final. I drove an incredibly hard program because I knew that getting back to that top of the mountain is tough, and you need to really push and drive. And we had some challenges that were unforeseen. We could have done things a little bit better. But the last few years has been about pivoting and transitioning to what the next team's going to look like.
Did the club spend too much energy fighting the fights on too many fronts, a lot of it of its own making, from the board to the player group, in a period where you needed to channel all your energy towards winning another flag? Yeah,
look, that's a question you'd have to ask, the powers to be, about the energy that was given to that. My energy was really about what to give to the team. I'm a coach of the Melbourne football team, and I wanted to make sure I could block out the noise and give them the best opportunity for success, and that's my job, and that's the way I went about my business.
Has the board got a good handle on where this club's at right now?
You'd have to.
I have to ask them, I know.
You'd have to ask them. So, yes, and I know you want me to talk about it. This is a question you have to ask them.
I get it.
You've got Greeny's number, give him a call.
Yeah, but he's spoken about the fact that he thinks there are finals.
Yeah, he felt you should have been playing finals this year.
Yes, which you've spoken about the fact that it is a club in transition. So that's at odds with where they're at. So your capacity to convince them is not to the point where obviously you'd like it.
Yeah, look, I talk about this all the time. I think at the start of every season, there's probably 14 or 15 teams that have a want and a desire to play finals. There's no question about that. I don't like the word expectations. I've got a view that you are looking to build your next premiership team. You know, I want to be someone that builds premiership teams, and just getting to the finals isn't the outcome you're looking for. And there's a lot of things that go into that, and sometimes, you know, 7 wins compared to 12 wins, there isn't much in it. But what you want to make sure you're seeing is the transition to what you're trying to become.
And that's where you think they're at right now. So if a coach comes along and says, where have you left this club at? The playing list is transitional, so where's that Petrarca, where's that leave Oliver, where's that leave May, in particular, in terms of, are they going to be part of this next premiership?
That for the next coach, I think it's set up incredibly well. I'd be incredibly excited by the group that they've got available to them, the talent that's coming through. And, you know, they're decisions that I don't have to make anymore. So,
had you made decisions around what you were going to do with that senior core? Had you contemplated breaking that up at the end of this season?
You know, that's something, as I said, that's something that would stay between myself and the board and everyone, you know, at the football club. That's not for me to make those decisions or speak about. You know, I've coached these guys for a long, long period of time. I love them all dearly. I think they're wonderful people and wonderful players, and I think they're all icons of the Melbourne Footy Club.
Notwithstanding you're not going to answer it publicly, had you presented that to the board on the previous Monday night?
No, I'd spoken to the board. It was just a standard board meeting about, you know, where we were in the season, where we're at and what we're trying to do.
The selfless mantra that drove you to a success. I remember the time vividly. It was the catch cry of the whole setup. Being in Perth over the time, it was not about, it was parking individual ego and embracing team. And they did it to a point where the individual accolades just flowed. That was the irony of it all. So I think they've got away from that. Is that harsh, or is there some truth to that?
That's clearly when you know that success is there, when everyone can just fully give themselves over to the team and just be incredibly humble and hungry. And that's when you know your team's ready for success. And there's no doubt post-success it is more challenging. You know, it just is. There's more self-interest, more ego that starts to kick in, and that's something that everyone needs to be aware of. And ultimately, as a footy club, you want to be a humble, hungry organisation that's completely team-orientated.
Do you think there was a degree of impatience around you were trying to transform the connection piece? There's actually some data around to say you did it in the last 6 weeks, which I'm sure you're not oblivious to, but I don't know whether your board was oblivious to it or not. Did you pay the price for not being able to resolve quickly enough that core issue in your game?
Yeah, there's no question that was an issue for us over a period of time. You know, probably in the end it cost us a couple of finals in 23, and it was clearly a facet of our game that we needed to work on and get to work too quickly. And right now, in the last sort of 9-10 weeks, it's been transitioning to a point that's, you know, in the top 6 in the competition, and that's really exciting. But clearly,
the connection
and the ability to transition the ball from one end of the ground, the connection inside 50, the % direct score per entry, all that stuff is transitioning in the right direction. And they're the numbers that sometimes you look in behind around what we're trying to do and what we're trying to generate for success outside of just the win-loss column.
Did you watch on Sunday?
I did.
Okay.
The second half, I had a beautiful lunch at a birthday lunch in Paddington that I wasn't planning to go to, but when I got home, you know, I sat there, you know, obviously with some mixed emotions initially, but ultimately when the game was on the line, I want them to win. I love the players, I love the group, and I love the coaches and all the work that's gone into trying to get the wins on the board, and I was cheering for them late in the game.
Have you had the chance to sit down with the group?
I spoke to the group pre the press conference and you know, shared my love for them and what they've given me and over the journey. And I've taken Max and Jack out for a dinner and just a little bit of a reflection last Thursday.
Did you oversell love at the start of the year?
Oh, that's a big part of, you know, footy is the connection, and we had work to do in that space, was to reconnect and to get everyone back on the same page as a football team. And then from that connection point, you can grow some wonderful things, and that was well on the way. But, you know, people criticise the love side of it. Connection is a big thing, and that was the first part, was to bring them back together.
I've just been appointed the coach. I come to you and say, what do they need in your eyes to take them to the next step?
Yeah, look, you know, clearly the game's becoming a transition game. and you need to make sure that you've got the capacity to be able to do that. You need to be able the capacity to execute consistently over time under pressure. And I think, as I said, that the recruiting and list management team have done a great job in the last couple of years of starting to bring those type of players into the footy club. I think there's no doubt there's more of that needed, and as I said, I think the next coach is going to be pleasantly surprised at what he's got at his disposal.
Those contest kings that held you in such great stead. We're talking to Viney and Oliver and those boys. Have they got the capacity to change with the changing time?
Absolutely. They're changing now. I'm watching them now, how they're going about, how they train, how they move, what they focus in on. It's different. And they're starting to evolve their games to a different level. And I think, they've all got still some great years of footy ahead of them.
You will be in demand, I have no doubt about that. Have you spent time with the Giants this week?
I've spent some time up in Sydney, and I'm going to catch up with a whole range of different people. I'm open-minded to doing anything in football. I love the game. I love coaching. I want to get away, have a spell, relax, do some PD, and coaching is never complete. You want to get better. And I know with experience and everything that I've gone through, with some PD, I'm going to come back even better. So I'll speak to any club that is in the process of trying to build a premiership team and think that I can add some value.
So that's the pause in the coaching journey, which has been 11 straight years at Melbourne. You don't seem overly wounded by it. Are you guarding against that? Are we not seeing that?
No, I'm an optimistic person. I look at opportunity and everything happens for a reason. As I said, I was so fortunate to be at a great footy club for 11 years. That journey's come to a close. Another one awaits for me. A new adventure awaits. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to my next stint in the AFL.